Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If there's no objection, let's call the meeting to order at 5:08 p.m. Invocation, Councilman Parker.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're having our invocation given to us by Pastor Kathleen James.
Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We ask that you would bless our finance meeting on today, our budget session. We pray that you would give us the oversight that we need, the wisdom that we need to be able to make good decisions. These blessings we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, Clerk Doyle.
Carrington.
Present.
Goodman. James.
Here?
McGinnis.
Present.
Nicholson.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Rutherford.
Present.
Goodman.
Here.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Quorum being established, all members present and accounting for. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Support.
Moved by Rutherford, second by Goodman. Hearing no discussion, no amendments, no objections? Yeah. Roll call, Clerk Doyle.
All right. Carrington.
Present.
No, this is the approval of the agenda.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay. Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yep.
7 yeas, no nays.
Motion carries. Agenda is approved. First item, the department hearing for grants and philanthropy. We give the floor to the administration and the department.
All right. So thank you, Council. We're excited to start this second budget hearing. The grants director is here. The one thing that I will just say is the grants budget itself is fairly minimal, but Director Borngesser will explain to you why that is.
Thank you. The current grants and philanthropy organizational chart includes myself and 5 other staff members. Michael Martin serves as our grant writer. Renee Hall serves as the compliance analyst. Rebecca Eaton is a new staff member who serves as the grants accountant. We currently have a grants coordinator position open, which will be filled in the coming days. And then we have Matthew Turner-Reed, who is a temporary employee through the end of the ARPA funding. He is a home repair specialist focused on the Pontiac home repair program. The Department of Grants and Philanthropy has built and will continue to build power for Pontiac by leveraging public and private resources to improve the quality of life for Pontiac residents. That is our mission. It's what we've worked so hard to build our operation out to be able to do and will continue to do in the future. Our current staffing, you will see Matthew Turner-Reed is not listed here. He is funded through ARPA, so he is located in a different place in the budget. In future iterations of this budget, he will be located within the grants department. In addition, the current staffing includes myself, a grant writer, a grant coordinator, and a compliance analyst. You'll notice that Rebecca Eaton is currently listed under the finance department, which was something that was planned for during a different time when the city was organized in a different way. In the current iteration that you have, you'll see her listed under the finance staff. The finance director and I agree that this position should be moved to the Department of Grants and Philanthropy. She works collaboratively with us all day, every day. She sits in the same office as us, and it just makes the most sense organizationally. There are currently grant-funded positions in this fiscal year budget, and then there are future grant-funded positions in the 2023-24 fiscal year budget. Presently, that includes Matthew Turner-Reed, who's the housing development specialist. Again, his time is 100% dedicated to the home repair program. There are also positions that are listed here, such as the recreation manager, the assistant manager, the rec assistant. and part-time seasonal staff for the youth recreation program. All of these are grant-funded positions. You can see the grant funding in BSNA through observing the grant code, which is located at the end of the GL code. This is a United Way for Southeast Michigan, Oakland County out of school time grant, which the council did approve and accept the award of. You'll see that these folks are paid for at 50% for the next 2 years, so calendar years. This is a grant that runs on a calendar year and not the same cycle as our fiscal cycle. In the future, we look forward to building out grant applications when allowed for indirect cost fees that pay for the cost of salaries for our staff. In addition, that will be much more relevant when we bring CDBG back in-house. I just wanted to show you a few of the grant codes that we have here. Like the deputy mayor said, my budget or the grants team budget is not extensive. Essentially, it covers the cost of staff and the supplies we require to operate. But you'll see throughout the entire budget that there are lines and GL codes that have this series of letters after, which is a grant code extension. In prior iterations of the budget, you saw that these were called project codes. With the help of our new finance director, we were able to set up something new in BSNA called a grant module, which allows us to track grant funds in a much more robust way and will work wonderfully with our new platform, which is Amplifund. So as you go through the budget and you see codes that are located at the end of the GL code, you'll be able to see what the grant is or sort of make sense of what it might be by these codes here. Additionally, you'll notice that in this iteration of the budget, the ARPA designation for projects that we currently have and that we're actively working on, that's not included in this year's fiscal column. It will be in the next iteration. And these are the codes that are associated with each of the projects. And you've seen these codes. We use them when appropriating funds for purchase of DPW equipment, our parks work, and our Pontiac home repair program. And that's what I have for you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, and thank you for being here this evening. We hope to get you through this portion expeditiously. What would be the GL number that would reflect the Amplifund Grants Management Software? I know you just alluded to it, but is it housed in another department, or would we see it here, or is there no sort of continuing cost beyond the initial investment?
So on Tuesday, during the normal council meeting, you'll receive a resolution to appropriate the funds for the cost of Amplifund for this fiscal year. That'll create the grant code in the budget for this fiscal year to cover the $60,000, which is a cost that's due now. In future fiscal years, such as this budget, you'll see that it's appropriated within the grants department budget. There's a line for software and Amplifund. It does not have a grant code within it because we will appropriate the ARPA funds to that space. The total cost that was listed in the budget for that service, and I'm just looking for the line, I'm sorry. Is 101-699-818-000. You'll see that it's listed as 50,000. This will be reduced to 39,000 in the next iteration of the budget.
Okay, so other professional services? Okay.
Yes. At the time of the drafting of this budget, we didn't have the actual costs from the provider. Now we do.
Very good. Grants and philanthropy, questions and feedback? Pro Tem Carrington.
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. Just one particular question. As you planning to bring the CDBG funds department back into in-house, how are you looking staff-wise?
We're in a comfortable place right now. We apply for a very large volume of grants, and as we work through the transition process with the county, we'll have a better understanding of if our staffing is adequate, if it will require additional staffing. Keep in mind, we'll be pulling a 20% admin fee from that grant award. Also keep in mind that we're only eligible for program year 2024, and so those funds are not realized until the following year. So this budget will not be impacted by that decision.
All right, thank you. No follow-up questions.
Further discussion?
I have a question. So when we bring, thank you. So when we bring the CBGD funds back in-house, we will be actually controlling, it won't be a fiduciary like we have community health.
That is
Financial-
correct.
Okay. And then my follow-up question is, if we, year-to-date, how will we know what's actually being, like, right now, we know what you need, but if you needed to increase the budget, would it be another amendment item towards when we do the final, finalizing of the budget? If you needed any more, like, for staffing, support, things of that, and for training, would that be something that you would be able to submit?
Yes, at this time, we feel comfortable with what we've presented. The staffing costs in here reflect the needs of the department. The training expenses that are listed here reflect the number of staff we have. So we're in a comfortable position with the budget we've presented, but if there are any changes, we'll certainly submit.
Thank you.
What are other municipalities that have a comparable department or position to you and your department?
Well, the city of Detroit has, which isn't necessarily comparable in size, but they have a department that's arranged in a similar fashion. It's housed, because of the size of the municipality, it's housed within their finance department. And I think their staff is titled Fund Development or Director of Advancement or something like that. They're structured in a very similar way. We worked with consultants when we were building the structure of the department who built this same department in Detroit. And so we tried to mirror their activities because they were very successful in raising resources for the city. A more comparable size, I think, would be Kalamazoo or Flint. They have a less concentrated version of this where grant staff are actually dispersed within the departments. I felt at the time that it created silos of work and didn't allow for collaboration in funding, which is really important when you're stacking funding resources.
It would be probably no surprise to veteran observers of city council meetings that the city council is extremely enthused about the work of your department and you in particular. I think as a municipality, it's an ace up our sleeve. And so I was curious to know in terms of who else was out there in the hunt, that had that dialed up capacity. And so I welcome any other thoughts on that, but I do want to share with you that for a municipality where I do a lot of work professionally, they were asking me about how our grants and philanthropy department and team operates because they were salivating at the thought of having, that dedicated and coordinated effort, especially as there's these sometimes unique, sometimes recurring funding opportunities from the state or the federal government. And it takes a lot to put in a quality application regardless of whether you get it or not. It's a big undertaking. And so municipalities of various sizes, sometimes they can't compete because they don't have the capacity, let alone the expertise. So I just wanted to share with you that this week I was having those very conversations in another Oakland County municipality.
Wonderful. Well, I'd be happy to share our successes and lessons with them if they're interested.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Brother President. I don't necessarily have a question, I just have a request. That outstanding PowerPoint presentation that you did today, can we get a copy of it to put in our books?
You can.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Side note, I also love the formatting that you do for special presentations when you're showing, out to the community the sort of grants-funded programs and initiatives, the way in which the new city's refreshed branding is incorporated. So the home repair program's a house in the heart, or a tree for tree replanting. It's very kudos to you leveraging the communications team and partnering to make it come to life.
Thanks. Well, this presentation was made by Paula Bridges.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love that. It enhances the product in terms of engaging with the community, but also from what the important work you're doing, you're reporting back to funding organizations or prospective funders, so we want to put our best face forward. So
I agree.
Leveraging the full tools in our toolbox as a community. Any additional questions? Councilman Goodman, then Councilwoman James.
I just want to say thank you. You made this a very quick and painless process. I love your department, so keep it up.
Thanks.
Yeah, I want to say thank you as well for the work that you guys have done on coding the things that are being done in the city, that grant money is being paid for. But looking at your budget, I'm pretty sure that there is in the budget a way that we can look at to see a bottom line number for grants? I think that's in the general budget, but are we going to put it anywhere in your budget? Not in the budget, but somewhere like on that page that shows the reflected number from the general budget of how much monies have come in through grant funding?
Yeah, so that's a conversation that I've been having with the finance director, and he has been a delight to get to share thoughts with. We have an interest, or I have had an interest over the last 2 years in being able to show our grant revenue that's been restricted and released for future functions. Oftentimes we receive multi-year grants in 1 year where the revenue is realized, and then the work actually occurs in the following year per the grant agreement. And so we need to establish a way to restrict what we already restrict, but to show the release of restricted net assets. Sometimes that's referred to as temporary restricted net asset. And it's released over a schedule created with the finance director and myself. Because of the absence of a finance director, this is a project we've just started, so we will certainly present that in subcommittee and then to the full council.
Okay.
To further answer the councilwoman's question, in case you were wondering, one of the charts in the presented budget shows that $13,637,857 is the anticipated grant, total grants that were brought in. So
Where did we see that? What page is that on? Or what's that under?
if you, so it's not in that, it's in the, it's in this booklet, and it is the one,
Isn't that the one
2,
on the-
3, 4, 5, 6 page.
It's on the 6th page?
Yes. No, go all the way to the front.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was an eye-popping impact to show in relation to income tax and property tax, how much of a heavy hitter, how it's a substantial leg of the stool now. And I know historically that would not have been the case for our municipalities. So it's opening doors and creating positive progress for our residents and our neighborhoods that would not be possible. Councilwoman James, did you have anything further?
No.
You can come back if you do. Councilwoman Rutherford.
I just want to make sure I got this number right. Your department alone has got 13 what million?
So the number that's in the budget packet is the projected revenue for that for the next fiscal year.
And just the grant department?
And the grants. And so I would also like to note that the budget only recognizes revenue that we receive directly. So oftentimes grants are awarded to the city, but the money never actually comes here. It's a process of letting the project to MDOT or other state institutions or organizations. So there's a decent amount of grant revenue that's not realized in the city's coffers and exists through in-kinded or pass-through grants that we obviously manage on our end, but the money is not in this budget.
So a follow-up question to that, even though it's not explicitly budgetarily reflected, what's the wow number that you're tracking? I know you shared that at a previous city council meeting, but the dollars keep flowing.
That's a hard question to answer, and I never like to give a hard number in that way because we oversee traditional grant revenue, federal appropriations, state appropriations, entitlement awards. We oversee a large amount of the American Rescue Plan funds, carryover grants from prior years, and portions of development agreements. And so some of those we manage large portions, and some we manage very small portions of, but I track them all nonetheless. Overall, if we're talking about all of those numbers together, whether we've procured those resources or we simply provide, not simply, if we provide management of those funds, the total number is $54,464,037.96.
And that's in part because the American Rescue Plan's a
Yes.
big chunk of that. Okay. Thank you for that context. It's helpful for us to know the varying nuances. Further discussion on grants and philanthropy. Any additional operational or organizational concerns in terms of the long-term success of your department that you'd like the city council to know?
No, we're very excited. Hopefully by next week, we'll be fully staffed and we're operating at full steam. We're submitting more grant applications now with a stronger base and foundation and case for support than we have ever before. We're very happy. We're excited to move downstairs into a larger space that accommodates all of us. And we'll be more public facing and available for residents. So this next fiscal year will be an exciting one.
Councilwoman James.
When will you be moving downstairs?
The carpet's being installed next week, and then we do need to procure some furniture and move some computers, and at that point, we'll be moving downstairs in preparation of the home repair program so that we're available to residents in a more open space and comfortable setting.
And that's going to start next week, you said?
They're laying the carpet next week, so
Okay.
I'm hoping that it happens in the next couple of weeks, yep.
Okay.
Further discussion? Mayor Grimel, anything regarding grants and philanthropy that you want to really emphasize or
Well,
zero in on for the city council?
I do want to emphasize the amazing work that Director Borngesser has been doing, as well as all of her staff. It's an incredibly effective, efficient department. It's the kind of department that we want to see more of here at City Hall, the kind of department we can hand something off to, and we're confident that it's going to get done promptly and effectively and with a great result and outcome. And so I do just want to commend not just you, Director, but all of your staff for the amazing work you do. And of course, it's a department that brings in many, many, many times as much revenue and funding than is spent on the department itself. So thank you for all of your amazing work.
Any further discussion? With that, thank you very much for your time. Have a great rest of your evening. We now turn to the 50th District Court, and we're honored to be joined by the administrator, the Court Administrator Ward, for further context on the budget proposal for the 50th District. Good evening, everyone. Welcome.
Am I supposed to know how to work this? We don't have anything that fancy. Okay, thank you. IT to the rescue. Thank you for having us here today. Judge Walker is on her way. Hopefully she'll get here before we finish. But we're looking forward to the upcoming year. We have been closed from April of 2020 until January of 2023. So we've gone through a whole bunch of changes. We've lost staff. I'm happy to say that we've finally picked up approximately 5 new clerks. One of the supervisors actually went outside and for her smoke, and she kind of looked around and she said she just got so happy because the parking lot was full. We've only had a handful of cars there. So we're looking forward to 2024. This is our org chart. I'm not sure if everyone knows Judge Jeremy Bowie. He is our newest judge. He replaced Judge Martinez. Each of the judges have their court recorders. I have under me Lisa King, who's my deputy, Maura Volpe, who is the office manager, Juan Polanco is our chief security officer, and Renee Alvarez is our chief probation officer. Our clerk's office is the largest department, and really it is the core of the court. Anything that has to go into court actually comes through the clerk's office. They are busy, busy, busy all of the time. Our mission, vision, and goals. As an equal and independent branch of government, guided by the principles and standards of the Michigan Supreme Court, acting with integrity and transparency, shall provide a safe, accessible, efficient, and impartial system of justice. We will efficiently and fairly resolve disputes while preserving and maintaining respect for the rule of law and individual rights. Excuse me. We will embody professionalism, respect, integrity, and accountability in delivering our very best efforts to serve the public. In order to try to achieve our mission, our goals are to foster judicial independence and accountability, improve access to justice via all approved methods, including but not limited to access to the premises, access via technology, and promote court information to the public. Communicate effectively with our funding unit and court users via all available methods, and enhance security through education, training, technology, and awareness. The fourth item, the enhancing security, is something that we're really concentrating on. Over the last years, things have really gotten kind of wild. And we have a small security force, but we've got metal detectors. We've just recently acquired tasers. The tasers we had were outdated. So officers are being trained on how to use the tasers. They can't carry them until they have been trained on them. We have put in for a new security system. Ours is very antiquated. We have very big back monitors that you probably can't find anywhere else but in our court. And we're trying to stay aware. We have people who, we've just hired 2 additional court officers. These are people who have been trained. They either have a police background or a military background, and they're very up to date on security measures for the court. Some of the factors that will affect our revenue and expenditures, one of the big factors is the clean slate laws. Great laws, but they will affect the revenue of the court. 21, the Secretary of State went through and any licenses that were suspended because they missed appointments, didn't pay their fines and costs, have been reinstated. The new laws may affect the person's current driving record, and in some cases, they're totally restored. We're looking at fines and costs. MCL 780.621G does not prohibit automatic set-asides for unpaid fines and costs. However, a court must now reinstate a set-aside conviction for unpaid fines and costs. So what's happened is the state has a list of different offenses that they are automatically setting them aside if a certain period of time has passed. This is really good for a lot of people. You know, we were all young and kind of dumb at some time and did some crazy things. And those things tend to follow people for many years, and it prevents them from getting good housing, good jobs, and so forth. This new law will help so many people. It's just incredible. So we cannot, once it's set aside, we cannot collect fines and costs. We can collect restitution, but of course that all goes to the victim, but the fines and costs we have to wipe out. We're looking at, we've had a position for a collection person. We haven't been able to fill it, but we are going to aggressively try to get someone in that position. We're looking at the options of collection firms, garnish income taxes, and those kind of things. The cost for mandated and necessary court services, such as interpreters, visiting judges, substitute recorders, those types of things is daily rising. We are making the use of visiting judges, particularly for our landlord-tenant cases. I know that over the past couple of years, there have been a lot of complaints. We're finally getting that department to the point where it is current, and people are getting their day in court much sooner. And that is primarily the purpose of the visiting judge. Of course, if we have a judge, we've got to have a court recorder. That comes in, and we have several ladies that are very good recorders, very attached to the court, and as a matter of fact, one of them is a recent retiree from the court. So we've got good people. The interpreting services, from when I first started many years ago, has just grown and grown and grown. We have a lot of English limited people. So we are constantly bringing in interpreters. These interpreters go with the person throughout the case. So if an attorney is at jail and they want to talk to their client, we have to provide that interpreter. So again, those costs are all increasing. Some of the miscellaneous things that are on the budget, the medical insurance for retirees. This is a very long story, but I'll keep it short. The emergency manager eliminated retiree insurance for the court without any conversation with us, without any notice. So these employees who are under the union, and those of us who came in under the standard handbook, we were told we were getting retiree insurance. Well, that has not happened. Initially, we had 2 people who were actually getting their insurance, but they were kicked off in December, so now we have to pay for their insurance. We're lucky that the insurance that we carry opened their doors. They really didn't have a retiree system set up, so they've enrolled them in our insurance, the same insurance that we do yearly. And we've got 3 people enrolled, 2 union people, 1 non-union. And just last week, we got news of 2 more people who are going to be retiring. So they will go into that pool. I'm not sure that I think I asked for 60,000. I'm not sure that that's going to cover that many people for the entire year. Professional services, again, that particular category had a nice increase because we are, with those mandated services we have to provide and the contract recorders and so forth. Contractual and part-time labor, we're trying to bring in people to assist with the clean slate legislation and to catch up from 3 years of being closed. We have boxes and boxes and boxes of files that have to be filed. We're working with the purchasing department. We've had someone come out and give us a estimate. We've got rooms that are full of nothing but boxes. We can't hardly get into those rooms to recover cases that we need to use for the clean slate legislation. So we're working with purchasing to try to get something in there sooner rather than later so that we can jump on these cases that are now coming out to us. The bathroom upgrades in the clerk's office, I actually tried to take pictures. And me and technology did not have fun today. I could not print them out, but they are very antiquated. The tile on the floor is so discolored. They're pretty bad. And these are situated right in the clerk's office, so they get a lot of activity. And they're really just kind of yuck. And just to end, thought I'd throw in a little funnies. A good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge. That doesn't happen in our court. And of course, if you don't like the judge's ruling, you either walk out or you try to climb up there like that lady does. And you hear this from teenagers all the time. I did it because everybody else was doing it. So again, this is our presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And if the Chief Judge makes it, we'll be grateful for that, but no stress on that front. We're really grateful for you being here on behalf of the entire court operations and the hard work that you do day in and day out. I want to give the floor, saw a hand from Councilwoman Rutherford and then Pro Tem Carrington.
Yes, good evening. Two questions. What is the estimated number you feel that you're going to need for the insurance for the year? You said 60,000 wasn't enough, so if there was a magic number, what would that number be?
I just got a report today that shows what the premiums are. And it's running at least 20,000 a year. Well, no, if they're single, it's only about 12,000. But if it's more than one person, I would say it's close to 20,000. So we have 3 people in, that'll take care of the 60, and we have at least 2 more that we know will be retiring in a very short period of time.
So about 100,000.
I hope we don't lose that many people to
Hypothetically.
retirement, but yeah.
Okay, and my second question is, has anyone from the administration or anybody done the estimations for the bathrooms and what needed to be done? Has it been presented to the administration?
No.
And
We,
if-
we
okay,
had
sorry.
not presented it. I happened to go by there today, and it was like yuck. And so I decided to make that part of this presentation.
Can you all, because I'm over building and facilities, could you get, when you get an opportunity, can you please send me the pictures directly to my email?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah, and at our most recent subcommittee meeting, they had shared with Councilwoman Rutherford and inquired that we'll be hopefully having a property condition assessment for the 50th District Court, that they're going to be prioritizing that.
I just would like to know the timeline of it,
Yeah,
since
yeah,
we're
for
fixing
sure.
everything else.
Yeah, that'll be
Fixing
helpful.
everything. Thank you.
Pro Tem Carrington?
Yes, thank you, President McGinn. Just one good question. You mentioned collections.
Yes.
So currently, the court is not doing any type of collections on any fees that are owed?
Yes, we're collecting, but if people fail to pay, we usually do a show cause hearing, have them come in, they present to the judge why they didn't pay, or they don't come in at all. So with the collections arm, we'll have someone that concentrates specifically on that.
Okay. So y'all haven't been able to go after those that don't pay? And
Not with the new law. If it's been expunged, we can't touch it.
okay, thank you.
Any further? Councilwoman James?
I had a question about the work that was done last year. Just kind of wanted to confirm that the air conditioning, the work that was done on the HVAC, all of that has been completed and behind us?
It's completed. We do have an issue with uneven temperatures throughout the building. It's my understanding that a module could have been purchased where we could have controlled that, but it was not included at that time. Council has been very helpful in trying to get I think it's in a bid process now or close, so that we can get that module. Because if we have to call them out to set the temperature, it's very, very expensive.
I guess I thought that that module was a part of what we approved.
It was, and
Prudence?
we can give the floor to the subcommittee chair, who might be able to give the context.
Thank you, Brother President. I believe the last council had budgeted for a certain amount, but as they got to looking over it and reviewing it and investigating a little bit further, they found out that there was a little bit more to the repair that was than what was originally budgeted for. And so what they're doing now is getting the complete estimate of all the other stuff that needs to be done. And certainly, since it is going to be a little bit more than what was budgeted, they are also asking that the budget be increased.
But we do have in this current fiscal year funding for that purpose, and we can give the floor to Deputy Mayor Stevens.
So on everything that's been said to date is true, with an additional truth. Unfortunately, because the module was not purchased at the time, and going forward to today, it is not possible to fix the problem by buying the module. And in fact, it is going to be exponentially more cost-effective to start completely over, which is why we're actually in the process of doing what the councilman said.
Yeah, I guess then my question would be, if someone would explain what has been done, what changes have been done, or have they all been set aside because the module was, what changes have in fact been done to the, the air conditioning? I mean, do we have a new unit? What has or has not been
Meaning in
done?
the last 12 months?
Yes.
Since we were having
Yeah.
this conversation last? Anyone able to bring us up to speed? Is it essentially been set aside while going back to the drawing board?
I don't have the exact, I can't answer that question, so I'm going to pass until Tuesday.
I think the Department of Public Works might have that, might be able to unlock that answer for us when we engage with them next. Anything further, Councilwoman James?
No.
Councilwoman Rutherford?
I'm looking at the victim right administration. There's a decrease with like $1,254. Is there a reason why that's happened? It was $9,254 in 2022. It decreased to $8,191, and then it decreased again to $2,923. And for this year, it's only $8,601 that have been item item
Which number?
276,00696.003.
Okay.
The Victim Right Administration. Could you explain that to me?
Again, a lot of those cases that are dismissed, we have to physically, well, not physically, but actually go after them only to collect the restitution.
I was thinking this was in regards to the domestic violence. You know how they have the people from the Haven come in and things of that nature. So that's not under this line item? What line item? is
Some,
that?
it's domestic violence
Right.
cases, shoplifting cases, all of those things. If there's a restitution that's been ordered,
For context, yeah, it's on the revenue side, and I only know this because unfortunately I've had to pay it before. It's sort of saying, in addition to your probation and your court fees and whatever other sort of punishment you're getting, you've also got to kick in money to the Victims' Rights Fund.
Right, I understand that, but you know how you have the people from the Haven that come in and sit with the patients when they're going through, patients, I'm sorry, with the clients when they're going through domestic violence. Where's that line item to pay for those people to come in?
that sit with,
So if I'm
oh,
a,
we don't have, are you talking about a victim advocate?
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, we don't have that. That would be something that would come through the prosecutor's office.
So all it's showing is the revenue side.
Okay.
That the district court collects the revenue of that fine that's imposed on somebody who's been convicted of a crime. They're supposed to pay for victim, there's I don't know how they determine the amount.
So just about, there's never been a victim advocate department in the 50th district? You know how they, okay. Thank you.
Do you know of other district courts that have that role, or have you only seen it at the county level?
I've seen it at the county and district level, but it's not a court function. We have to remain impartial. So the prosecutor would bring in a victim advocate to work with their victim. We would not have anything to do with that.
So that could be something good for Law in the Court Subcommittee to investigate further, see how we can basically open up more of those opportunities for victims in the Pontiac community. Good lead.
Thank you. And my last one is about drug court. You know what I'm talking about? That's still not being put in the physical budget as of this time? Y'all still haven't got
We actually participate in the drug court at Waterford. That's a regional drug court, so we're in that region. And, no, actually, it's not.
Nope.
We participate in the Veterans Court, which specifically addresses the needs of veterans who have committed offenses. We do not have a drug court.
And at this time, are you guys actively pursuing that to come into our district?
We have not talked about it in a while. We have one probation officer, one chief probation officer, and a assistant.
One for the whole city?
Yes.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce Chief Judge Walker to acclaim,
Yes.
applause, and fanfare?
Come and save me.
Oh, you're doing great. Thank you both for accommodating. We intentionally try and start these budget hearings earlier than our traditional meetings, and I think, FYI, I might have said we called called to order at 6:08. If I did, that was a Freudian slip. It was 5:08. But we intentionally scheduled that so that way district court leadership, department directors, department leadership don't have to wait as late in terms of ending their workday. So, but thank you very much for juggling with your busy schedule.
Appreciate that. I'm Cynthia Walker, Chief Judge of 50th District Court. Sorry for being late. I had it on my calendar for 6. But did you already go through the numbers? Yes. Okay. Were there any specific questions? If not, I'll talk about Blight Court for just a moment.
Councilman Rutherford was just asking about the prospects for drug court and those services in the 50th District Court. I know Law in the Courts has had some conversations about it, but do you see that being a short-term or long-term realistic initiative?
Realistically, it won't be a short term. Do we need it? 100%. Could we use a mental health court, a drug court, a sobriety court? Yes. Do we participate in the Veterans Treatment Court with Waterford? And am I one of the judges that presides over that? Yes. But we could use a specialty court, and they have been proven beneficial. The statistics show recidivism is less. They're intensive programs, and they are probation heavy. We have had for quite some time one chief probation officer plus one. Our chief will be retiring soon, which leaves one, and I believe she's going to work another 2 years at most. Most of the courts that have specialty courts have 4 to 5 probation officers. It takes a lot to develop it. Back when Judge Bowman was chief judge, we went through the trainings when the drug court processes were starting, and we had one of the city attorneys go with us. We went to a few of the national trainings, and then things changed, budgets changed. It didn't happen.
A follow-up, Councilman Rutherford was identifying and concerned about the number of probation officers, even setting aside retirement. In terms of the caseload, is that sufficient? Is it sort of at a working equilibrium for your operations?
I'll tell you why it is for right now. There are so many changes statewide. The push is not for supervision for probation unless it is absolutely necessary. So in cases of drunk drivers, domestic violence where counseling is needed, substance abuse issues where counseling is needed, those are the kinds of cases that go to probation. But if someone is simply driving on a suspended license, even though they have multiples, we're not putting them on probation. And we now have to justify why we feel that supervision is needed. Never used to have to do that, and there are many district courts throughout Oakland County that have been probation heavy in terms of referring everyone, and it ended up being cost prohibitive for the defendants. We never adopted that position. If it was necessary, we would order it.
So I guess my follow-up will be hypothetically, if you needed another probation officer, or say you said you need 3 to do district court, is there a way I can see an estimated budget for that? For how much the actual cost of it for an extra probation officer?
The cost, yes, probably, based on surrounding courts, but the cost wouldn't just be for probation.
I understand. I just want to know, because you said earlier that it's not a long-term, it's a short-term goal to try to do drug court.
It would be longer term, yes.
Right.
But we can.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Okay,
Thank
we can do that.
Other discussion? Broad levels, taking a more expansive scope. What are the storm clouds on the horizon for the survival? It will always exist, but in terms of being able to meet your mission but also excel, what are the storm clouds that you're concerned about?
Storm clouds are need for a magistrate, in difficulty finding one because state law requires that they live in the city of Pontiac. And our dockets are incredibly full. We have a hard time keeping up with the dockets themselves, plus doing arraignments of the people who are in jail every day at 11:30. The judges arraign for 1 month at a time, so we're on call for a month. So for that month, you really can't do jury trials because you don't have time, because you have to stop at 11:30, and it may take 2 hours to get through just the jailers. The magistrate would cut that out for us, which would mean we could hear more cases and not have to stop at 11:30. but the state law requires that they live here. For the attorneys who live and work here, they do significant work for the 50th District Court, and the statute says they can handle no cases at our court, not civil or criminal if they're a magistrate. And we thought at one point that we could join in with a neighboring court and utilize their magistrate part-time. We cannot. I know there is someone who is working with the city to see if they can push to get that legislation changed. I did talk to the state court administrator about it, state court administrative office, and they said someone had run that attempt up the flood, of the flagpole before, and it did not come through for whatever reason.
Councilman Parker, through the Law and the Court Subcommittee, had shared with the full City Council at this week's regular meeting, and thank you for the District Court being so engaged and present throughout the year at our City Council Subcommittee that focuses on law and the courts. But he identified that Attorney Richard Taylor, is he being elevated to magistrate, or is that?
Not as a magistrate. He's now the managed assigned counsel for MIDC. It used to be Paulette Pullman, but she is now the chief assistant attorney who will be doing defense for the county.
Okay. So it's not that you don't have enough magistrates assigned or permitted to your district court, it's the constraints the state has in terms of eligibility.
Correct.
That if there are those that live and work in Pontiac as attorneys, they already have a big book of business that comes before the courts, which renders them ineligible.
They would have to live in the geographical city of Pontiac. Now, they do not have, believe it or not, they do not have to be lawyers. However,
Plot twist.
given the large amount of criminal cases that we handle, I don't know how we could appoint anyone who was not an attorney and who did not have a background handling criminal cases, because the setting of bail in cases is a major function of the magistrate.
Councilman Nicholson?
I did reach out to State Senator Jeremy Moss's office and Brenda Carter's office, and they both expressed that they would be interested in learning more, but I think they need to hear from more of us to just let them know that that's certainly an interest of ours to delve into this and maybe have a conversation with Judge Walker about those opportunities and what changes need to be made.
That would be great. And we don't have the ability to just hire a magistrate. It's a city position. I mean, it's a court position, but it would have to be funded and the council would have to approve whoever it is. Even if we had 2 or 3 part-time magistrates who could each do a couple of days, that would be a help.
Councilwoman Rutherford?
How much hypothetically does a magistrate cost?
Probably around, would you say, almost like what the court-appointed attorneys would be making, between $100, $125 an hour.
Okay.
Councilman Parker, you believe it might be 200,000?
Well, I thought it was mentioned, but I may have been misquoting on another figure, but I thought when we met, there was a $200 figure tossed around. I could be wrong.
We
I know
might
we
have
were trying
thought
to get it down.
200 for half a day.
Right.
Perhaps, because the visiting judges make 400 a day plus mileage.
Are there there still visiting judges in the district court?
Yes, we have Judge Gubo, who is retired from the Oak Park District Court, who handles our landlord-tenant cases at this time. We're still waiting to see if the Supreme Court is going to mandate a continuation of the rules that they put in place during COVID, which requires the court to have a pretrial rather than going straight to the landlord-tenant hearing. So he does all of those. We did use other visiting judges before Judge Bowie took the bench in the time between Judge Martinez leaving and Judge Bowie starting. And Judge Martinez, who recently retired, will be coming back and helping us a little bit. He'll be there next Friday. He'll be there for 1 week of each month for the 11:30 arraignments. He's going to give us some relief, each judge who's on call, for 1 week during their arraignment month, it'll be a break.
You wanted to speak further about Blight Court. You have the floor.
Blight Court, we have, and I think Mr. McIntyre can attest to this, we have worked pretty cooperatively with the city in trying to get the Blight Court, the code enforcement cases back at the court and up and running. I can tell you the more that is done to fix things, to bring people into compliance, it's a little more labor intensive. than we anticipated. So I'm tracking my hours now that are spent. The deputy court administrator is tracking her hours. And you'll probably hear from the city attorney, who's doing a great job. Very interested in compliance. So there's a lot of orders that are coming back to the court after these hearings, whether the person appears or not. And they're putting teeth in these things so that they have the ability to come back. So I think it works. But in terms of the docket, it's not something that I can spin off to the other judges. It needs a dedicated judge, and it needs a dedicated clerk, in my opinion. I was talking to the deputy court administrator about that today. But we're trying to get a read on how many hours per week realistically to see how we can share those duties.
Do you think you can have a read on that by the first Tuesday in June?
Definitely.
Because that would be very helpful for our budgetary amendment time frame, so we could bake it into the cake before it goes into the oven. Now, we could always throw ingredients in with an amendment mid-year, but hey, we've got the oven open, so.
I like baking. Go ahead.
Clearly, I'm really torturing this metaphor. Councilman Rutherford.
So I just want to make sure, last month, y'all, or it was, just so that I'm correct, it was 1,100 tickets that were wrote to you guys at this time? And yeah, was that correct?
Are you talking about code enforcement tickets?
I'm talking about code enforcement. Those were rentals only?
Some more, what Mr. McIntyre probably.
Can you answer that question? I just want to know. I believe you was told to me that it was 1,100 tickets that were wrote last month, almost $700,000 in fines. Is that correct?
I don't know the exact number, but I don't believe it's 1,100.
Was it? I'm asking for, okay.
I honestly think that we're more in the range of about 300 tickets that have been issued since we started in June.
Oh, okay.
Not all of them have been litigated yet. Some are already, we have more tickets, but I believe that our number as far as what's been litigated is about 300.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Further aspects of blight court and or I should say, code enforcement ticket, hearing them and processing that. Anything else you'd like us to know in terms of the administrative impact?
It does take some time. For example, I do them first we started out 2 Mondays a month. Now it's every Monday, and I see that they're writing more. I'm glad to see that, code enforcement is fully staffed in all the districts. So my Monday starting at 10 o'clock is code enforcement. The more tickets we have and the more that are coming back, I'm not really able to handle other city cases, city ordinance cases, and I only handle those 2 mornings per week as is. So that pushes everything to Wednesday, which means if I have trials, pre-trials, anything else, it needs to be on Wednesday. We're trying to work that out. But I don't see it ever being something that can just be blind drawn so that it goes randomly to all 3 judges. I don't see that. It's got to be a dedicated person.
Mayor Grimel, then Pro Tem Carrington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the district court for their being really amazing partners in a whole host of ways. You've been amazing partners, Chief Judge and Court Administrator, in terms of blight court, and it's not really blight court anymore in the sense that it used to be termed that, but in terms of processing the blight citations in a timely way with actual enforceable orders, it's just been a huge, huge help and benefit to the community as we seek to make sure that we're holding property owners, slumlords, and others accountable to actually clean up their properties and make sure that they're no longer a burden on their neighbors and neighborhoods. So thank you for your partnership in that regard. But thank you as well for your partnership as we seek to finally clear up these long-standing issues, including your HVAC challenges and other things. We are seeking a engineering study to really have a clear handle on exactly what is needed moving forward. As the Deputy Mayor mentioned, it's unfortunate that the module was not added back when it should have been, which would have been a much less expensive, much more efficient and cost-effective way to handle it. But we are where we are, and unfortunately at this point, it takes quite a bit of re-engineering of the system to really get that sorted out. But we have gotten quotes from engineers for that work, and we're moving forward to actually do that assessment so that we can finally make those needed repairs. And I just appreciate your continued patience on that, as well as so many other deferred maintenance items that you've been waiting on for many, many years. So I appreciate your partnership and the collaboration between the city and the district court. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you for providing a team that listens to us and responds to us and follows up. You know, we appreciate that. It takes everybody. So thank you.
Pro Tem Carrington.
Actually, I pass.
Okay. Further discussion on the district court budget. Oh, a thumbs up from Councilwoman Rutherford.
Thank you.
Councilman Parker.
I think somebody may have said this and I drifted for a moment. You mentioned that in order to handle the code enforcement pieces, you may need a judge and a clerk.
Not necessarily another judge. I'm just saying it requires a judge who's doing that and not being distributed, not the work being distributed among the judges.
Okay, thank
It
you.
may take additional clerical staff, though.
Okay, thanks.
Further discussion? Thank you very much for your presence here this evening, your work on this budget proposal, the sort of follow-up work to come as we review and amend the budget through this process. So we welcome the additional figures as you compute them. And more broadly, on behalf of the 61,000 souls who call Pontiac home, thank you for your leadership and service for the pursuit of justice for Pontiac residents and property owners.
Thank you.
All right, we move now to the Human Resources Department.
Good evening, everyone, council persons and our mayor, deputy mayor. So what you see here is the HR organizational chart, and I believe that's going to be changing probably within a week. So we're going to be down to 2 individuals in the HR department, which I think that's definitely going to be doable for us. We're automating things a lot more through ADP and our onboarding. So I think that will be definitely doable for us. Our mission statement, the Human Resources Department is here to develop and manage value-added human resources policies and programs. At the City of Pontiac, all employees will be treated with respect. It is our mission in the Human Resources Department to support the total operation in meeting our goals through its most valuable resources, which are our people. We have also developed a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, which says our mission is to create and maintain a safe workplace to ensure that all voices are represented and heard. We all have a role to play in cultivating and preserving a place of belonging. We embrace and celebrate the unique experiences, skills, knowledge, talent, and self-expression of all employees, which strengthen our organization. Together, it is our goal to promote a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion, to fulfill our mission, and to become a champion of all things equal and non-discriminatory. This is a review of 2022 to 23 in a year going forward. So I did not make any significant changes to the budget for 23 and 24. And so I'm really big on using metrics and analytics in order to determine how to move forward and what's needed and what can be eliminated. And so looking at the metrics, I saw that we only have 11 positions left to fill. So and we have a turnover rate of 3%. And I don't expect that there are going to be any real significant changes that are going to cause us to need like temporary help or anything like that. And so also too, coming in, there is no previous there's no previous data from like the years before with the previous administration. So I'm not sure when they developed the budget what the thinking was that went into that. So I kind of look at this as a zero-based budget in terms of not having much history there. In July 22 to April 23, our temporary staffing costs were $10,280.51, which is really on the lower end, considering that we still have about like each person who's unemployed has about 1.7 jobs to their advantage. So only having to use that amount is pretty good. One thing I will draw your attention to, and we really have to focus on that this year, which relates to our succession plan. 24% of our city staff, they're either at retirement age or they're close to it. That's quite a significant number. And they're in our most vulnerable departments, which is our economic and community economic development, and also in finance. And, as you know, how long it took us to get a finance director. If we were to lose these individuals from finance, we would kind of be back in the same situation of having to struggle with finding some way to fill those holes in finance, which staffing agencies have turned out to not be the solution because they themselves are having difficulty. So with this in mind, it is important, it is imperative that we develop a succession plan this year. We need to know when these individuals are thinking about leaving, and when they leave, who could possibly fill those roles. Again, like I said, we don't want to rely on a staffing agency. We want to know who could fill those roles. And if they're not ready today, what training do they need for us to get them ready, say in a year or two? The cost per hire, we've hired 55 employees, not including court staff, and we've only spent $3,626.16. This is because we mostly have placed ads for free. Because we use ADP, now we also have access to ZipRecruiter that we don't pay for. So we don't really have a lot of overhead costs when it comes to placing job ads and advertising. We've been doing that, a great job with just placing those for free. So I don't see any significant changes there. We have 11 positions left to fill, and that's going to cost us about $725 to fulfill the remaining 11 positions. Michigan's unemployment rate right now, it's relatively low, it's 4.1. It's a little bit higher than the national average, and with the lower unemployment means there's more jobs than the job seekers. But despite this decline in the unemployment rate, the growth of the labor market, it is slowing. And I've read that. I try to keep on top of these things, and so I read these articles all the time. And Fortune magazine, Forbes, they're all saying that the labor market is slowing down. So this plentiful jobs that we had, that's going to start to go away. For HR, and like I said, I think that we'll be okay with our 2 HR employees that we will end up with. There's no perfect ratio, but when we started, the HR department was more so seen as like a startup department because there was so much work to be done, and with the amount of turnover that had occurred, I would say in the last 4 years in the HR department for the city, things were in a real mess. And so once we become more automated, which is what we're doing right now, we're entering all of the employees' data into ADP so we can retrieve that at any time from anywhere. And if something unfortunate were to happen and the building were to burn down, we would still have all of that employee data. So that's our big project we're working on right now. So I feel like we would only, here I said 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee. So our goals, first of all, is we need to fill positions within at least 30 days. Right now, it takes us about 99 days to fill a position. And when we, sometimes go back to the individual, they tell us, oh, we've already accepted another position. 99 days is just unacceptable. So we have got to start, once we send those resumes out, we do our part and we do the phone screen. Those resumes can't just sit there. So there has to be something that's, we have to keep going from there. If you're the supervisor that's in charge of interviewing that person, then you need to interview that person. Or we're just spinning our wheels and it doesn't make sense. I found this here where it says that although companies are hiring more selectively in today's labor market, professionals continue to feel confident in their ability to get a job, and they have little patience with organizations that take too long. Right now, we're taking too long. The next item here is the cost of vacancy. And so let me just start by saying that HR metrics are a combination of math and also science because you're measuring human output. And so sometimes it doesn't seem to really make sense, but there is an HR metrics, what we call the HR metrics Bible, that has every metric that you could think of in the world that has been scientifically tested. And so that's where these come from. So for an example, the cost of vacancy is when you have a position that is vacant. So this is an example here. If we have a laborer 1 vacancy, we lose about $925.80 per month. And if this is a lower position, so this is someone that's making like $33,100 per month. So imagine what that loss in revenue is going to look like if we have somebody whose position is paying $110,000 annually. So that loss in revenue is going to definitely be higher. Moving on to the next one here, employee development. Our employees, again, related to succession planning, we need our employees to be ready. And right now, I don't think that they're taking advantage of the training opportunities that are available to them. So we really need to push this. They need organizational training. So they need to know how the city works, how the city operates. They need customer service training that's going to benefit the city. Personal training. We all can use soft skills, how to communicate better, how to be a better listener. We need those types of trainings. And also career training, again, related to succession planning. If we need to know who's interested in, working as a planner, or who's interested in working as accounting. What career path do we put them on to get them there? And I'm sorry, you got 2 4s here. One should be 5, but there's 2 4s. So the first 4 is keeping the benefit costs for employees to a minimum. So we're going to have some challenges as we go forward because now we're considered a large organization in terms for our benefits, which means that we are now going to be experience rated. It's a good idea probably now to add a wellness program because employees love paying almost nothing for insurance, but if you don't watch that high blood pressure, because now we are experience rated, you won't be paying $0 for insurance. So definitely possibly could install a wellness program or other ways that we can make employees more responsible for their health. Increase our visibility of diversity, equity, inclusion. As we are looking to recruit Generation Z and our millennials, understand that this is very, very important to them. They want to work at a place that is truly a diverse place and is accepting of all people, and we need to really show that and put our best foot forward when we do that. We don't want it to just be a written statement on a piece of paper, but but when you really get inside here, you find that it's really not that diverse and we're really not that accepting. And again, creating a strong succession plan. I was reading a document and it said that many of the employers are afraid because the boomers, they're getting ready to retire. They hold all the knowledge. These are the people who did work for the companies 13, 15, 20 years. They know their jobs inside and out. They're getting ready to retire. And then you have the Generation X is left. And they're going to be the last of your knowledge holders. So then you got millennials, and you've got Generation Z, who, they got their own thing going on. They want to be TikTok, sensations, and Instagram, famous. And so a lot of companies are looking at what happens when we do lose our baby boomers? Where do we go from there? And that's it for me. Any questions?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you definitely for your presentation. I'm glad you mentioned a succession plan because I think that's very important. And what I've learned to do at my particular organization is that we create a work encyclopedia of every position within a department, meaning that person that handles those separate tasks create their own encyclopedia so they can turn over to someone once they retire or leave.
Yeah.
You also stated that it's less than $1,000 it takes to hire to 11 particular positions that you still need to hire for. Now, you said you do a lot of this free. Now, I guess my question would be is that how many applications are you getting per job application? Because it doesn't seem like a lot of money to be actually put out to try to bring some qualified staff to the city.
I can tell you for one position, we got like almost 90.
Okay.
90, yeah. So, yeah, it's been working well for us. But, when we switched over to ADP, we actually got ZipRecruiter for free, which that was a huge savings because they're not cheap.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Rutherford.
Good evening. The lower level jobs, the park crew member jobs, how many people have applied for that currently?
We have, I think, 5 that have applied for that.
And how many months have they been open?
That one I can tell you, I can't tell you right now, but I can tell you the average of all of the positions is 99 days.
Last question. The Deputy Director of Public Works, how long has that been open?
That position has been open. That's another one that's on my list because I had to look at all of them in order to get an average. But I believe that has been open now for about 53 days.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Nicholson, did you have a hand?
Yes, we are undergoing, or going to be undergoing an RFP process for a new benefits broker. I think the wellness plan could be something, as we're looking at more value rather than dollar amount
Right.
on that RFP. That, bring your best ideas for what we could be doing for wellness. I think that would be good to hear from some of them, what they found that works or things that have more meat to it.
Right.
Be great.
Other discussion when it comes, Councilman Rutherford.
At the job fair that you currently went to at CEO, have there been any direct contact with people like that are returning citizens that could work these entry-level jobs? And if so, what is the administration or you guys doing to actually pursue those type of jobs for those type of individuals?
Yep. So because we're going to have a downsizing in our department, I'm going to be taking over reaching out to those individuals. Yeah.
Other discussion when it comes to human resources. Obviously, a lot of departments are moving around. Okay. A lot of departments are moving around, playing musical chairs in the building. Is human resources solid and steadfast in where you'll be?
Yes. I would have to, before moving down in the basement, I would have to know that there's no mice down there, that the lights are going to be on all the time. Yeah, so we're where we are.
Okay, very good. Deputy Mayor Stevens.
Thank you. I was just going to point out something. When we had our meeting last week, we talked about and the director spoke about the commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. She talked about making this a place where people want to be. The mayor talked about the idea of employee enrichment. I just wanted to point out that you don't see that in the miscellaneous expenses line item. You do see that in the other professional services line item. You see how much we spent this year and how much is scheduled for next year. So that's a plethora of items have actually been put there. And so I just wanted to draw that to your attention that that's where those funds are. In case if you want them, they can be left there or they can be pulled out to specifically a line item that says employee appreciation or to miscellaneous expenses, but currently it's lumped in with other professional services.
Thank you for highlighting that. Councilwoman James.
Yes, I apologize for going out. I don't know whether I missed a conversation, but I wanted to mention your conversation about the training availability. I think last year's budget, we put some minimum amounts in there. Deputy Mayor wanted to make sure that all of the employees had access to training, and you mentioned that some of that is not being taken advantage of, and that's probably because we're not seeing the annual required evaluations that generally workplaces provide. And I'm wondering, in terms of budgeting, what does that look like for budgeting, that every manager is required to submit at least an annual evaluation of their employees? Is there software connected with that? Is there anything budgetary connected to that requirement?
Yeah, so that's going to be put into ADP. Are you talking about the performance evaluation?
Yes.
Yes, so that'll be put into ADP, and they'll be able to just go in and do it automatically, and then the employee will be able to chime in if they have, yeah. So that's one of the reasons I'm happy about ADP, because it's really helping us get automated.
And ADP we already have, so that would not need to be a part of the budget.
Yes, and in addition to that, where I come from, training was mandatory. You didn't get an option, and you had to do at least so and so many hours of training. And that may be something that we need to look at, is that, you have to do 25 hours of training. And so that's just kind of what I'm used to, because if you don't, most staff, they're not going to do it.
Well, though, from my perspective, though, or just in my background, generally it comes through that evaluation, that sit down with your manager, where you go over your job, what you're doing, what you've been asked to do.
And establishing goals.
And establishing those goals, and that's generally where those questions of, what additional training that person might need, they generally come up in those evaluations. Right. And you commit to, okay, I'll take this training, I'll take that training. When those are not happening, then, and it's just up to the employee, just in your day-to-day job, you just don't even think about it. Right. It's just not something that you are thinking about, maybe I should take this training. Those are generally connected to evaluations.
Right, and your manager really, because I signed my staff training, so that's how they got their training, because they didn't ask. Why? And I felt like I know better what they need. Yeah, so I signed their training.
Okay.
I'm going to give the floor to Councilman Rutherford.
Just a follow-up question. The amount, and I guess this is to the administration, wasn't it mandatory for all department heads? I believe I asked that in a couple of council sessions several weeks ago, that certain department heads are required to have training. Has that been done yet?
Right, so these are two different levels of training that we're speaking about. Mm-hmm. The short answer to your question is yes. The long answer that I'm going into is we're talking about the fact that every member of the city had $4,000 available to them for training, and many individuals have just not chosen to get additional furtherance of education.
So I guess my question is, is the administration or HR going to make it mandatory for people to keep their jobs to get training?
So the short answer to that is no.
Okay.
But there's a much longer, more complex answer to that. There are two issues here. The first issue is when we have the training, the dollars that we've allocated for everyone for training are for career and personal advancement. And so the idea is that we as a place to work understand that if we pour into you, you will pour into us. And so we want to give you the opportunity, if you want to, if you came and you did your job and you do your job perfectly fine, that's great. But if you have aspirations to move up and go from being a laborer 1 to being a laborer 2, we will provide the cost of training for you to be able to make that next step. We are not going to say, in order for you to stay being a laborer 1, you have to take continuing education credits, because if you are doing your job as a laborer 1 and you're doing it perfectly well, we're not going to mandate that you just spin your wheels if it's not making you do your job better.
Yeah, I do. So my question is, we're giving everybody a 3% raise, correct?
That is a cost of living adjustment, yes.
Okay, so how do we justify giving everybody a raise when he or she don't have the skill set to do the jobs that they may have, or have not been trained to do the jobs to increase? I'm just asking.
Councilwoman Rutherford, that's exactly what I just said. If an individual is doing their job and doing their job appropriately and does not need additional training to continue doing their job appropriately, we're not going to force them into training.
Oh, I got that. I'm just trying to, I need to be justified for me giving people money, so that's why I'm asking the question.
Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to clarify here. I think something's getting lost in translation. So there are two aspects to the questions, I think, and Deputy Mayor highlighted this. One question, I think, relates to mandatory trainings that all directors must go through. And yes, mandatory means mandatory. If they don't take those basic mandatory trainings, then yes, they would lose their job if they didn't do that. There's another bigger bucket of funding available to individual employees, and really all employees, where it's designed to allow them to not just be trained for their current position, but to actually obtain training for potential advancement and future positions. And that's what the Deputy Mayor is referring to. That is not mandatory. That is designed to be an additional fringe benefit of sorts to help attract and retain employees so that they have the financial resources made available to them to advance in their career, hopefully here at the City of Pontiac, but that's not necessarily the case. Obviously, nobody is wed to any one employer for life. So the idea is that creates a broader horizon for future opportunities beyond just making sure they have the skill set for what they currently do.
Thank you, Mayor Grimal. Any other questions? McCall.
The other thing, Councilman Rutherford, that I think will be important is that it is also a cost of living adjustment, which is just to make sure that people's wages are meeting with inflation. So like separate of training, which I do hear your point on that, I also want us to be aware that part of that raise is just to make sure that no one is poorer than they were last year working for us in the same position.
All right, thank you, sir.
Just for the record.
Councilwoman Rutherford.
Thanks. So I get that, get all of that, but I'm talking about if I make 105 and then y'all want to give us 108, and then I just want to make sure that we're getting more bang for our buck. That's my only issue. And so that's why I'm asking those questions. I ain't trying to knock nobody who's making $36,000. I'm talking about the department heads with the training. That's why I'm asking these questions. I just want to explain that to you so you get it. That's it. Keep going.
All right, thank you. Anything else you want to offer the council?
No.
No? Okay. Council, do you have any other questions? No. Hearing none, I'd like to thank you for your presentation tonight, and we look forward to your department and your continued pursuit of making sure that we are the company that everybody wants to work for. I know you headed in that direction.
Yes.
So again, thank you.
And thank you guys for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, our next hearing is community development.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Thank
evening.
you for hearing us tonight present our budget for community development. And I say our because I have a larger department, and I have asked all of my managers to attend tonight just in case there are some specific questions about the different divisions. So we do have Deborah Younger, our economic development manager, Mark Yandrick, our planning manager, Jack McIntyre, sorry, our code enforcement manager, and Larry Domsky, our building official. So our org chart is a little bit larger. It's broken down into our different divisions. And we do have some new positions highlighted, new proposed positions highlighted. Those proposed positions are a community development technician, a economic development assistant manager, one full-time code enforcement inspector, and 5 part-time code enforcement inspectors. Also, I do want to point out, and I feel really bad about this, we have a new building employee. It is a building inspector, and her name is Erin Hansen Hardcore Melhouse, and she does not appear on this list. I apologize for that. The Community Development Department is made up of 4 different divisions. I am the director, and then, as I've stated, we have the Building Safety Division, Economic Development Division, Code Enforcement Division, and Planning and Zoning Division. The department mission statement is to facilitate ongoing investment in the community and safeguard the health, safety, and welfare of those who work, live, and play in Pontiac. Here we have a breakdown of the proposed positions that would be new to our team. The community development technician would be described as being responsible for performing a wide variety of technical, paraprofessional, customer service, and clerical work associated with community development projects and programs and performing related duties as required. The economic development assistant manager would perform supervisory, senior, and complex economic development work in promoting and facilitating the attraction, location, and establishment of businesses. Work involves providing substantive assistance to businesses in promoting their development and/or retention, and as well as other informational, promotional, and facilitation services, including the implementation of ARPA-related programming. This position will report to the Manager of Economic Development. A full-time code enforcement inspector. This code enforcement inspector would be dedicated to the downtown. This inspector will manage the parking program as well as ticket for any code enforcement offenses that he or she found in the downtown while managing the parking program. And then 5 part-time code enforcement inspectors. 1 of the 5 will be for the downtown, but this is an after-hours and weekend position. So this person would work nights and then Saturday and Sunday. The 4 other positions I lost my place, will assist with the full-time code enforcement throughout the 7 districts as we have our other full-time code enforcement officers. Building safety and code enforcement share a mission statement to promote public safety, safe structures, well-kept neighborhoods, and a clean and desirable community to protect the investment of home and business owners. The Economic Development Division's mission statement is to promote business and employment opportunities, identify needs of the business community, and facilitate strategic partnerships to encourage business growth and job creation. Planning and Zoning, to administer project development processes and other city functions in a professional and friendly manner to all citizens and developers to facilitate growth and redevelopment across the city. Each division has special projects and special focuses that they spend a great deal of their time working on. Building safety has some specific demolition goals. Those goals are 25 Myra, the Purdue School, and Roshire Court. Economic development is focused on completing the RFP for the housing study and finding somebody to help us work through that. ARPA-funded programming, redevelopment of the Kennett Road landfill, and redevelopment of Purdue School. Code enforcement focuses on will be focusing on the parking enforcement services, as that will be a new program, and we will be building that once we have it up and running. Enforcement of anti-blight rules and regulations, and rent roll verifications and inspections. Planning and zoning will be working on the master plan implementation, zoning code updates, zoning map updates, and document digitization. Accomplishments, since we have all been here, are the streamlining of processes and procedures in building safety, demolition of 118/120 University, as everybody's been seeing the past few days, that is going on. Next door to it is the 108 Union home, which will also be coming down this week. 18 Tacoma is to be demolished using Oakland County funds. And 2,315 permits have been issued through the building department from July of '22 to present. Code enforcement has transitioned from Blight Court to the 50th District Court in order to make actions more enforceable. Development of strategic plans for project streets in all districts, prioritization of enforcement of unregistered and expired rentals and rental inspections, and 9,854 blight enforcement visits have been completed from September of '22, which is when Jack started with us, to present. Economic development is currently in the process of implementing the new parking program for the downtown, a bid for the Kennett Road landfill, and multiple other items that just were too long to add to a presentation such as this. Planning and zoning has filled all of its vacant positions. New zoning code amendments have been completed and passed. The marijuana ordinance, the mixed-use district standards, donation bins, and storage containers. Recertifying the city as a certified local government with state and historic preservation office has also been completed. And then all divisions have specific goals moving forward. Building safety is focused on eliminating blight and removing dangerous structures. Enforcement for violation and penalty for working without permits, which is a big deal. We have a shocking number of people that are caught on a weekly basis working without permits. So we do thank Larry and his inspectors for stopping when they see work going on and questioning the workers as to whether or not they actually have a permit. Code enforcement is productive enforcement of parking program in the downtown and to hold property owners responsible for the maintenance of their properties. Economic development goals are to implement, bless you, ARPA-related funding programs, provide support to small businesses utilizing ARPA funds, and to implement workforce development and job training programming. The Planning and Zoning Division is very shortly going to begin the master plan update process. This will be a long and very involved process with the council and hopefully all residents of the community. And they are working on their zoning map updates right now. And that is the end of my presentation.
Yes, thank you. Councilwoman Rutherford, you had a question.
In your presentation, I didn't see any new affordable housing projects. Has there been any built this year from your department?
In this fiscal year, I do not believe any new affordable housing projects have been built, but we are working on the housing study and we are working on the master plan, which will help us develop a program that the city can follow for approval processes for these types of developments so that we don't have to rely on the standard, can I get a pilot and not pay taxes ever?
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you were talking. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I didn't have much more to say.
My follow-up question is, you stated earlier the Purdue plans, but in a meeting prior to this, Purdue is actually being pursued to be repaired or to be demolished? I'm just confused.
We are looking to demolish
Okay, I
Purdue
just want to
School.
make sure. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
We are, but what may have caused confusion is that even upon demolishing Purdue School, something else still has to happen there. So that's what we're working toward with
Okay.
economic development.
Okay.
So Yes, actually, Deputy Mayor had his hand up just before you.
So I just wanted to bring to your attention that when you get to the part of looking in the line items, you will have two handouts. One of them is the general fund budget, and one of them is the enterprise fund budget. That was all.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Parker.
Thank you, sir. Just one question. You talked about issuing, I think, permits. Do we get paid for issuing permits? And if so, is there a dollar amount attached to issuing permits? And if
Yes,
so, how
and
much have we made?
I actually don't have that number right in front of me, but I can get that number to you. And there is a fee schedule that is attached to this budget packet that tells you what the cost is for each permit you can apply for at the building department.
And, well, if you may.
No, go ahead.
Just one last question. Did a marvelous presentation here. Can we get a copy of that? I know-
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll email it to you. And actually, all of my managers did a separate presentation, which would have taken a long time to go through, so we condensed it down into one. So I'll share all of their presentations with you. They might have a little bit more information in them that you might be interested in.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilwoman Rutherford.
You stated earlier in 4 slides back about the small business loans and all that being, when is that going to be implemented? Is it coming in the fiscal year? And if so, how are y'all implementing it for the small businesses in the city of Pontiac?
Do you
That's
want me to
okay.
just bring this over to you? I think I
That's
can just
okay.
carry it.
Sorry. Thank you, Rachel. We've been conferring and have been having some small business development forums with people around in the community. We plan to have several more. In terms of timing, we're looking probably to late summer, early fall. We've worked with the Enterprise Center run by the Pontiac Community Foundation. What our intent at this point, obviously nothing has been totally designed and approved, is to provide direct technical assistance to small businesses. And when I say technical assistance, I don't mean seminars and workshops. I mean direct, go into the business, fix their books, go into business, get their website up and running, go into the business and register the domain name, that type of technical assistance. And in addition, we would look to direct support to small businesses, and we're still determining that, but it would be the typical working capital, leasehold improvements, branding, marketing assistance, that type of thing. So after we roll out home repair, which is happening before you ask me, the next thing we'll be working on is small business development, and we're going to convene all of the people who have interest in some want to have a say about small business development. We've already been meeting with them, and we'll continue to do so and seek their input.
And not just limited to workshops, right?
Not just workshops, I
Okay.
promise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Stevens.
To help with your question earlier, Councilman Pro Tem, if you look at the budget for Department 249, it starts off with estimated revenues, and those estimated revenues actually are the estimate of the different fees that we charge. And so you can see in the current year, we had approximately $2.5 million in our budget, and in the upcoming year, we're estimating approximately $2.6 million.
Thank you. That was Councilman Parker's question, but just a quick question. In most of the budgets from your department, training expenses, I see that they've been increased significantly, but at the same time, I don't see much activity from the past budget when it comes to that.
I have not increased the training expenses from last year to this year. I just copied it over. And there has not been a lot of activity because our management came in late. So the budget year started in July of last year. Our code enforcement manager came in September, planning in November, economic development in January, December. Larry was January, right? Okay. So they have been working with their staff. Code enforcement is working on a certified rental inspector program that will be offered to the inspectors so they can go through that program and become a certified inspector. Economic development doesn't really have any staff other than a customer service representative who is welcome to take training if there's something that she would like to take training in. But Deborah, Aaron is in training, so.
Yes. Could you guys please come to the microphone because we want to make sure our community hears this whole conversation. Well, just both of you can come to the podium. Both of you. Oh, she can't walk. Oh, I'm sorry.
Right,
I didn't know that. I apologize.
Okay, everybody. I'm limping. Okay. We hired a building inspector for the home repair program. Their first week was last week. This week, they are in training as we speak. So as soon as they came on board, they needed lead training and asbestos training. I had them register, sign up. She's there this week, training for the whole week. She will be going in June. The new housing development specialist will soon, for home repair, be going to training as well. The inspector training was earlier, so we were able to do it. So we're starting, this management team is starting to identify training opportunities and want to send staff and make sure that they do the work and the job and that they have the training they need to do the job. So.
All right, thank you.
I can add a little more to that. I can tell you that I think what has happened is some of the training expenses came in after this was printed. So our electrical inspector in the building division just went through training. I know that because I just approved his reimbursement form, as did one of our building inspectors. And they are required by law to do these trainings every year. So they will be using that money.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Relaford.
I just want to make sure I got this right. So DPW is under you, correct?
No, it is not.
It is not? Okay. And then my other question is, when they do the when you guys are using ADP to do the evaluations for the people that work for y'all?
That I don't think has quite been implemented yet, but I think that's what they're working on implementing.
And lastly, has any evaluations been done on any of your staff since you've been there?
I have an evaluation for our planning manager, but not of anybody else at this point.
Okay.
Councilwoman James.
I have a couple of questions in regards to the housing. In regards to the housing study that we had talked about, I think the mayor mentioned a few weeks ago that the approach that we are going to take for affordable housing is to do a housing study. And the question I have is that going to be done as part of the of your plan, your master plan
update?
Or is that going to be done separately?
The housing study will be done separately, but the timelines will converge. So these things can run side by side. So, and quite honestly, I think it's good for the housing study to be going on during the master plan process, because then we can hear all of the concerns of the residents of this community, and all of that can be fresh information that can be incorporated and discussed.
And is the plan to include as a part of the master plan a city affordable housing plan?
Does that, I think that question is best answered by Mark. I'm not sure that that actually goes into a master plan, but it is something that is contemplated within the master plan, where the city would like to see its housing stock grow in the future and how the city wants to see that growth come together.
So would that be a part of the housing study? As a part of our housing study, would we then, or is it the plan to then develop an affordable housing plan strategy?
Deputy Mayor, you can have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Councilwoman. The housing study will do a couple of things. Most importantly, what the housing study will do is it will give concrete, scientific, whatever the word is that you want to say, backing behind some things that we already know, right? So we already know that the city of Pontiac has a shortage of housing. We know that the city of Pontiac has a shortage of housing in a number of different categories and levels. What this study will do is it will say, hey, we've gone out there, we've looked at the city of Pontiac, compared it to neighboring communities. We've looked at the trends in the area, and we believe that Pontiac could absorb, which means that if you put the housing units there, they would fill up in a reasonable amount of time. Pontiac could absorb X number of additional apartments between this cost factor per month and this cost factor per month. Pontiac could absorb a certain number of single-family housing units between these things. So that's what the housing study will do. It will say these are the types of units and the price points of those units that a professional reasonably believes the city of Pontiac can absorb within a given time frame. You will then take that information and it will be used to help determine where the city of Pontiac wants to put backing to subsidize developments. And what do I mean by that? So if we get the study back and it says, hey, the city can absorb another 1,000 apartment units at a cost factor between this and this. The city can then say, okay, development community, we are willing to put X number of dollars behind the development of this type of housing unit, and that money could come in the form of a OPRA, which is an obsolete property rehabilitation tax exemption. That money, that subsidization could come in the form of a land development grant where the city says, hey, we will put in up to $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever the number is of public infrastructure. We get to determine how we want to participate and which type of housing we want to help get developed.
Yeah, I understand that. That's, you know, what you're saying without saying it is that as a result of the housing study, we will come up with a strategy. And all I'm saying is it should be a written strategy. So, you know, an affordable housing plan, or
Agreed.
we can just say a housing plan that would include affordable, because I think, you know, mayor and administration wants more upper level housing as well. So that it's okay to say a housing plan, but what I'm saying is, as a result of our housing study, we want to see a plan.
Yes.
We want to see a written plan of how we are going to move in this particular area.
All right,
And I think that's what you're saying, that we're going to get that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. I'm gonna turn the floor over to Mayor Tim Grimo for the first time, so.
Yeah, thank you, Pro Tem. I just wanted to amplify what Councilwoman James has said, because it's very true. We want more housing at all levels, including affordable and accessible housing, but not limited to just more affordable and accessible housing. So we want more housing for all income levels here in the city. We have lost a number of residents who grew up here in the city, but can't find the housing that they're looking for, and so they leave for other communities. We want to keep them in the community. We want to make sure that lower income residents can find housing that they can afford here in the city as well. So we want to make sure that we have a broad range, a true mix of housing options for everybody, so that everybody who has grown up in Pontiac can continue to call Pontiac home.
Thank you, Mayor Grimo. At this time, Councilwoman Rutherford.
I just want to get clarity, because the moratorium has been lifted, correct? I want you, I'm asking you for you to answer.
Yeah.
I yield to
Yes.
this. Okay. And so we also want to make sure returning citizens have adequate housing as well, because I didn't hear that said. So I want to make sure that's a part of the new housing project as well, right?
As the mayor said, we would like for everyone to be able to live in the city of Pontiac.
Including returning citizens, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Including everyone.
Okay.
All right. Councilman Parker.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother President Pro Tem. One of the things I would ask, and I know it was discussed at one of the meetings I went at today, and it's probably going to be discussed at the meeting on the 17th for the Economic Summit, and I'm sure it's going to be discussed at the meeting that the county is having later on in June. Would somebody please, as we're talking about affordable housing, define what you mean by affordable housing?
Affordable housing can best be defined as a product that people that make between, 30 and 120% of the annual median income of Oakland County can afford. That is a large span, and it covers an enormous amount of people because you can't qualify it or quantify it as one specific thing. It means a number of things. It also can mean incentivized housing. It also can mean housing that has been built by new zoning standards. And what I mean by that is by allowing a smaller square footage of home to be built. Building a smaller home means that home is now more affordable. Allowing homes to be built on smaller lots, allowing ADUs, we can do a number of things to create affordable housing. It's not just putting a number on a house and saying, well, that one's affordable. It's affordable for whom, exactly. So that is what we're working toward.
Hold on. Well, thank you for that, your response. And I know definitely that making sure that the administration actually works on a housing study actually would definitely help us make some of the decisions at the table. So I look forward to seeing that particular study when it's done. Councilwoman Relaford, and then Mayor Tim Grout.
Just to tickle my fancy, how many Oprahs have been given out this year, and how many we have coming down the pipeline? And do income come from those?
How many Oprahs?
Yeah, like the ones downtown that y'all trying to write. Does income come from
I
them?
think we only have one Oprah on the books being submitted right now, and it's going to the next Finance Committee meeting, and then it will be brought to City Council. And there is do you mean a tax income for the city?
Yeah, it's two I know about. I'm just trying to see, I didn't hear those in your presentation, so I'm just trying to see, are they coming down the pipeline this year?
They are.
Okay.
They are. They will be brought to council soon.
Okay.
Is it okay if I ask a follow-up on that
Yes,
question?
please.
But to put a finer point on it, will there be any income or revenue impact, negative or positive, that we should anticipate, even if it's not explicitly in your budget? Obviously, that might have an impact on property tax revenue collection, correct? That there might be the foregoing of some fives or tens of thousands of dollars there. But is there an incentive or revenue that comes with an Oprah being in a municipality?
Yes. So what the Oprah does is it allows a formerly used property, a now vacant property, to be brought back onto the tax roll. What it does financially to the city is that it holds the tax value at a lower level than what it would be at should a developer remodel that building and assessing come through and assess it at the higher tax rate, the regular tax rate. It's held at a lower tax rate.
So it wouldn't necessarily cause a subtracting of current revenues.
Right. It would not subtract current revenues. It would just be a lower capture of the current millage rates available.
Roger that. The deputy might have the answer.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
So the Oprah, the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act or exemption, the PA 198, and the Brownfield tax credit program all three of them do not have a negative impact on current existing capture. They limit and or return future tax captures. The pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes, does actually have a negative impact on current taxes and also future taxes, because what that program does is it actually takes the property off of the tax roll completely and replaces the tax with a separate payment that is determined based on rents collected on that property.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and that's definitely a great distinction, so we can exactly know what hurts our tax base as well, what fuels some kind of development within our city. So definitely, Mike.
Okay. A brief question related to that. I don't have a thorough, exhaustive point of reference for the existing payment in lieu of taxes sites in our city. And I know through our subcommittee, there's been discussion about the sunset or, the renewal or non-renewal, if it may be. If it's possible, I think that the city council or that subcommittee could benefit, right, just from that sort of lay of the land about what we're talking about. So it's pertinent to this department, even though it wouldn't be reflected in the account numbers per se, but you're the gatekeepers for us as the gatekeepers in terms of what can remain and what can join the landscape when it comes to that, because that would be helpful to know. One, what are they, and two, how big of a kahuna are we talking about here? So when it comes to the Community Development Department, I just want to make it crystal clear, and it probably was already alluded to, this budget adequately provides for at least the next 12 months to come of the master plan initiation, if not completion, because we recognize that it'll be a substantial undertaking. Is there any cost, and you feel free to defer this to Manager Yandrick, but the Planning Commission heard a reference to us as a city council, and more importantly, us as a city taking the action of basically a notice of intent to revisit the master plan, that we as a city council may be taking up a resolution essentially formally saying, hey, we're going to be doing this. So it's broadcasting that and demonstrating that it's our intention. Is there any financial impact to us taking that? So he's shaking his head no. So we don't have a financial impact to that. But does this budget adequately provide for a robust initiation and undertaking, at least for the next 12 months, of the master plan process?
I am hoping that the master plan process will not take an entire 12 months to complete, and I have planned accordingly and do not believe that there will be any need for a budget adjustment in what I have asked for in this budget.
Okay, so that's helpful. What is proposed is your anticipation of all-in for the master plan, not just for the year, but really the completion.
The completion.
That's the target. That's my question for now. Thank you, President.
Right, thank you, President McGinnis. Any other questions? Oh, Councilwoman James.
I have one on the part-time employee positions for code enforcement. Could you give us some examples of how these part-time people would be utilized and why we feel we have a need for part-time positions there?
I'm going to let Jack, our code enforcement manager, answer that question.
Good evening. The first of the 5 part-time positions will be dedicated to downtown. So what we talked about when we talked about staffing for the parking downtown is that one full-time person wouldn't be enough, that we would need a backup person or somebody that could do the hours the off hours, weekend and nights if we needed that. The 4 additional part-time people that would be assisting the code enforcement people within their districts. My thought was, initially when I thought about that, I thought about 2. One that could help in District 1 and one that could help in District 7. Those are clearly, my findings have been that those are the 2 districts that it would be helpful to have some assistance, some additional assistance with the person that's already working full-time in those two districts. And then the other two folks, I thought would free the current people in their positions up by, maybe we could have those two folks concentrate on just writing up grass violations during the grass season. So they would write grass in all districts so that we can make sure that we're hitting every property that needs to be violated for grass taller than 8 inches.
Yes. Deputy Mayor.
Jack, can you also speak to the overtime that we're currently doing and how the part-timers would help alleviate that need going forward?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned several meetings back that we're utilizing a lot of overtime, and thank you for doing that amendment for that. We had a tremendous backlog when I took over of unregistered rental properties, and then in addition to that, some properties that just haven't been rented or inspected in years. The numbers were too mass for the clerical person that does a lot of the daily stuff in the office during the day to try to get all those scheduled. So we offered overtime. So having some additional part-time people, we could utilize them to help get that backlog caught up.
Council, any other questions? I just want to, you raise your hand? Okay. I just want to say, concerning your department, I definitely like to thank you in the work that you've done since taking over the code enforcement. I definitely have seen improvements in the 6th district. So I just want to thank you for actually taking care of some of the things that for the last decade I've been trying to get taken care of and that hasn't been taken care of.
Yeah.
So I definitely commend you for your steadfastness and making sure that we find out who own these properties, that we talk to their attorneys, whoever we need to talk to make sure we remove some of this blight in our community.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, as Judge Walker mentioned tonight, some of these are more complicated than we anticipate in trying to track down owners. We've had to file some cases in probate court to get some things resolved that way, especially on properties where there's an owner that's deceased, and that makes it very challenging to write a ticket to a deceased person. So we have to find out who is responsible for the property or who's intended to be responsible for the property to get some results that way.
Okay. My follow-up question is concerning the budget. Have you put money within your budget to do some of your own remedial removal of some properties that, for example, you say the owner has passed and the estate is in limbo? So have you considered a process in where you will hire a team to go in and clean off these lots and then look to the courts to retrieve that particular expenditure back?
Yeah, so I know the mayor's mentioned this publicly in a lot of different settings, but our goal is to go after all the property owners and alleviate the costs from the city. The city's been paying for a lot of cleanup that I don't believe that in the past they should have been doing. Mm-hmm. We should have always been going after owners of properties. There is a budget line that will allow us to, if we get a court order to do a cleanup, there is a line in the budget that will allow, give us access to funds to pay someone to clean the property, but then it would be reimbursed through an order from the court.
Right, thank you. President McGinnis.
Is there enough money in the budget to cover the $50 for the noise decibel detection meter, or did that finally arrive?
Yeah, that was last year's budget. Yeah, we've got it. It's working fine. So, in fact, we're going to be using it, I think, next Tuesday when there's reported noise in one particular neighborhood. It only happens on Tuesday evening, so we're going to be utilizing it next Tuesday for sure.
That must be them throwing their Tuesday night city council watch parties that are getting really wild. Yes, the noise decibel's too intense. But for the community's benefit, now that they have that otherwise simple device, that they can better ensure that the noise ordinance is being enforced. So to make sure I've got it right, the part-time code enforcement, they're also going to be enforcing parking code, if you will. That's
Correct.
part of the vision and the intent. At this cycle last year for the budget process, we amended the budget to provide for more vehicles because obviously the code enforcement operations and rental inspections operations was dialing up. Did that, is it sufficient? Or do you have the vehicles you need to
Yeah.
move around and is it working out?
Yeah, so we've had several meetings, Rachel, myself, and the deputy mayor, with Enterprise Fleet Management. It's a group that I used in a previous municipality. They do a tremendous job at supplying fleet vehicles for cities. So that should probably be coming to you soon in the next few weeks. They've submitted their proposal to us, and then of course we'll bring it to you for consideration. The first year alone, based on the trade-in value of the vehicles that we have, there should be no cost to us at all on the program, but our goal is to have 8 vehicles so that people don't have to double up and don't have to use their own personal vehicles, working through the city.
Councilwoman Rutledge, I'm sorry to see you.
That's okay. It's all right. Jack, good evening. How are you?
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
I have a question for you, just out of tickle my fancy. Have we closed the contract on the people that's actually cutting the grass already? Has that been closed out?
It has not.
Uh-huh.
We've had lots of conversations about this. We have, what we found out through our communicating with our attorney is that we have to at least have a conversation with the contractor. There was one contract that was submitted. And we proposed, we gathered some information from some other cities, including a city that he currently contracts with. And we, as of late yesterday, we sent a communication saying that we would like to bring something to you as long as it matched what he was getting paid for in another city, so.
And the only reason why I'm asking that is because there's been some issues with grass in District 1 that I've called you about. And I just want to make sure that people are getting the opportunity to do the bidding so that not just one person monopolizes this contract every year.
Yeah, we
That's all.
started writing grass up a week ago Monday, so we definitely are hoping that we get a response. If we don't, then we have a plan that we're going to bring before you, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, we only received one bid on that when we went out for the bid. So.
Right. No, I thought it was going to be extended. I was told that. Did that not happen?
I had that conversation with you, and then after speaking with the attorney, we were told that we had to entertain the bid that we received, and so we're negotiating that right now.
Okay. I'll wait.
All right.
Any further questions? President McGinnis.
For the economic development staff to come, sounds like there's going to be increased capacity inevitably, but increased capacity to be able to help fill the gaps in terms of stimulating activity and growth for downtown Pontiac, which is sort of the traditional commercial district, the commercial corridor that has the most impact or value in terms of our tax base and calling card, sort of visibility as a community. What's the vision and what's the budgetary implications, if any, of how that will play out once that economic development team is fully occupied?
Do you want me to just go ahead and answer that question?
Okay.
There's so much more work that we can do if we have more qualified staff members in the economic development division. Deborah spends a lot of time working on the building of the ARPA-funded programs, and the home program is about to be unveiled, but then we're going to move into small business and workforce development, and every single one of these is going to take a lot of time and effort to build and roll out, which means less time and effort is being spent on business attraction, business retention, and small business services. So the idea is that an assistant economic development manager would be able to spend time on those, specifically those items, which is going out, talking to small businesses, trying to figure out how we can best help them. We would then, of course, introduce them to the ARPA program, but we also need somebody to go out and do actual boots on the ground business attraction and retention. We don't want to be losing the companies that we already have here. So that's the idea behind that program. Or that employee. Did I? Yes, and assigning somebody to downtown specifically to help downtown business owners so they know exactly where to go. And I think a lot of times people don't know what help is available, so that person will help them understand the programs, learn about programs that they didn't even know existed, things of that sort.
Thank you for that. I look forward to seeing that in the coming fiscal year implemented and fully operational for your own salvation's sake, for your, we want to make sure that our personnel, our staff in all departments aren't overloaded. I know the nature of the work of moving Pontiac forward means that every gear and piston is inevitably overburdened and has to overperform because there's so much work to be done, but also so much opportunity, and I'm glad you referenced that. So when it comes to the economic development team, as with so many other elements, the investment in quality, supported, and trained staff yields much more than that initial investment.
Right.
And I think that'll be true for economic development. That'll be true. It has been true for code enforcement. It's true for planning. So your department, all the different divisions, that is very much true. But it's also true for what we've seen for grants and philanthropy. Public works in a different kind of way, because it's almost, we're saving more funds that we'd have to shell out if we allowed our infrastructure to deteriorate further, because the pipes are going to pipe and the roads are going to no longer be roads, and that leads to more issues, more lawsuits, more residents and business owners who throw up their hands because of these challenges. So that's a converse way of that the quality and supported staff really yields results. So I look forward to the Economic Development Division having that, sort of being able to be filled out, and I'm glad that the budget for the department provides for that.
Yes. I also wanted to add, I know downtown has been mentioned a few times tonight concerning extra staff, but I just want to make sure that we don't totally forget about the rest of the city and the other business corridors within our city.
Right.
For example, specifically talking about the 6th District, we got Perry Road, which has opportunities for a lot of growth, Cesar Chavez, a few other corridors. So I just want to make sure that that person works diligently to bring businesses to this entire city. And I know that I'm hoping that's what the person would do.
That is what the person would do. We would definitely not focus their efforts solely on the downtown.
But I definitely know the importance of making sure we have a viable downtown, which I spend at least 2 days a week in our downtown. So I just want to make that be known so people won't say I don't like downtown.
We don't think that. As Council President mentioned, there's a lot of opportunity. There's opportunity everywhere. We just need to be able to spend more time looking at it and bringing it to the forefront, because I think that there's a lot of people that look at this community and completely just write off the city of Pontiac immediately. But if they knew more about it, if we had somebody that could bring that information forward and share it in the right groups at the right industry events and things of that sort, I really think that we can change the tone for those that look at Pontiac and just try to write us off.
And my follow-up statement is I know that you are proposing some extra positions, but I would definitely like to see some kind of rubric of some objectives with some quantified measurements to determine whether adding these new positions has been beneficial from a year from now. I think that's definitely important. Councilwoman Rutherford.
Yeah, I just want to say, it's just, my whole thing is having hesitation about adding new positions because I don't see productivity in certain areas. And so what I'm going to be looking for is, why are we doing it? What's the purpose of it and what they going to do? Because I have this saying, what you going to do for me? And that's what the citizens want to hear.
Yep.
You have more minority businesses owners, especially women, who feel disenfranchised because they don't feel that the economic department gives to them or yields to them or makes them understand it on a elementary level. So what I'm looking for is, whoever you hire, that you have somebody who can explain it to them, not talking at them, but talking to them. It's a difference. That's it.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilman Rutherford. President McGinnis.
The rental unit inspections, that aspect of code enforcement, we haven't talked about that at the subcommittee level in recent months, and I just want to elevate that for the whole council's understanding and what implications that might have for the budget. How is that going in terms of the capacity of the inspections? We know that luckily we have leadership in these respective divisions that have that frame of reference, which is really valuable. But how has it been going now that we've done this? You know, this time last year we were talking about taking these disparate, functions and make it more of a combined dual track purpose. How are we doing in terms of being able to hit those marks, being able to get the units inspected in a timely way and making headway?
Yeah, so just today I was walking some invoices up to the Treasury office, and I'm looking at the checks, and I'm like, this is incredible. There's one, well, not just one, but one that I had in my hand today that has over 300 units, and it hasn't been inspected in over 12 years. They weren't following the schedule. So part of that overtime that we were talking about, we've been able to take a deficit, if you would, of over 5,000 uninspected or unregistered properties, and we're down to less than 400 that still have to be given notice. They're getting notice now. They're coming forward. They're providing their rent rolls. The challenging part is now we have a ton of inspections to do. We're doing them every single day. So combining the two, I think, was the smartest idea. Combining code enforcement with rental inspections. You're there already at the property, and you can address both issues, both the rental issues as well as the property issues.
So in follow-up, are we correspondingly also seeing more revenues when it comes to inspection of rental properties across the board? Obviously, it requires more capacity, but is there an increase in those fee and inspection revenues?
Well, the one I just gave an example to had to cut a check today for almost $12,000 to get their apartments generated. So I don't have all the raw numbers. I could probably put some stuff together, but I know that this is a complex that hasn't shared any money with the city, hasn't filed the code or the requirement to get their units inspected every 3 years. So in a matter, since January, we've been able to, that would be an interesting number. I'll try to put that together, what we've done. But I know that we've more than doubled the numbers from where we were last year in terms of doing rental inspections. And that was at a time when it was just George Pfeiffer and myself doing all those inspections. So I can work on putting that together, though.
But so, broadly speaking, it's double the number of inspections. So that's intense.
Yeah. Code enforcement, I think we're just under 10,000 since September. And the same time last year, we were probably around 3,000. So
tripling the number of code enforcement activities broadly.
Yeah, we call them code enforcement inspections. So when we get a call or we see it for ourselves and we go out there. But more importantly, I think there's like this new, there's a new understanding. There's a lot of communication behind the scenes. Getting that one particular, in fact, this organization actually came several council meetings ago and was promoting their apartments. Come rent with us. We've got this great deal. And I'm watching it from home with winter on my lap. And then all of a sudden, logged in from home and I thought, my God, they haven't had an inspection in 10 years. How dare them come here and talk about it? So I called the next morning. I'm like, what's going on? Don't come and, present yourself and you don't even have your stuff together. So let's get this together. So that was challenging. That person has intentionally avoided getting those inspections done for a very long time. And so now we're in there getting them done and they're getting them corrected. We're kind of having a no tolerance policy. We're issuing a lot of tickets to landlords that are not coming into compliance with their apartments. And one of the things that and I've mentioned this before, part of what Judge Walker had talked about earlier is putting together comprehensive plans and legal plans that gives us the allowability to go and do something with that property. And I've talked before about vacate orders. When I first mentioned it, when we first started, even in the subcommittee meetings, everyone just kind of looked like, can we do that? And we're like, yeah, we absolutely can do that, because if Larry Domsky doesn't approve that it's suitable for living, then they can't live there, and they can't continue to live there, and they can't continue to make money from that rental property until they do. So they have to come into compliance. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Goodman.
And so with that, I personally want to say thank you, because I think I may be the only person on council who rents an apartment. Rent an apartment in an apartment building.
A rent off.
And I say that because I have actively, my code enforcement officer, who is Brett, has recently in the past month come and inspected my apartment because my apartment had been itself behind. I had made multiple complaints to you personally about things that needed to be fixed. So not only seeing it personally myself and having my code enforcement officer end up in my apartment after going through the whole building, but also just actively seeing those things change in the community. It's great to see. I'm truly very happy to see that, because we must protect our tenants in the city. With that, though, I do have concerns with, obviously doing the vacate order is a very specific thing to get the landlords to take action. However, the immediate concern is obviously those people who are likely there have nowhere else to go, because we, as a whole, have an affordable housing problem. And so, with that, I obviously want us to hold negligent landlords and slumlords accountable to the highest ability that we can. But is there any plan for making sure that these people who we will be displacing by doing a vacate order actually have somewhere to go?
So I will tell you what my experience has been in other communities that I've worked is that we very rarely get to that point. But the ability to have that as an option changes the whole way that this game is played. So when you go to an owner of a property that's been negligent for years and you say, this is how this is going to work, we could actually, this is not like an eviction, we could actually say that your unit is unsafe and uninhabitable. And a good point to this is we don't really want those people in that type of housing. So, but most of the time we don't have to get there. The ideal thing is to get this into court so that it can be worked out through the prosecutor and the judge. And most of the time we have a positive result from that.
Councilman Goodman, any follow-up questions? Councilwoman Rutherford, and then Mayor Tim Graham.
I just wanted to ask if you guys could start giving out the renters' rights books that come from the state. I think it's so important that we empower our renters because they don't know what they need to do, and as an inspector, that gives them the rights, because some of them don't know you can put your money in escrow or don't understand that you can take pictures of what your landlord is doing, because we have a list, especially in my district, of slumlords that I'm just waiting for you to go after. And so I just would love for us as the economic developer to put that a part of y'all to get those booklets that they hand out from the state saying renters know your rights, because oftentimes the renters here are discarded, and so they just need to know that they have power too. So I'm just asking if y'all could put that in your budget. That's it.
And I'm sure Mayor Graham, when he speaks, can speak to that, because he has a very purposeful plan for tenants. And
all right, thank you, Councilwoman Rutherford. Any other questions? No. Mayor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman Rutherford, because I have flagged that for not just code enforcement, but also our communications team to make sure that we're getting the word out about tenants' rights. This is really, really important because yes, it's important for us as city government to hold landlords accountable, but we also need to empower tenants to hold their landlords accountable as well. We need to come at this from both angles. And so we have started those conversations. As you know, I was in the state legislature, and so I'm very familiar with those guides. And, you know, they're certainly a good starting point. We might even want to put some additional information in that's more specific to Pontiac, but it's a really important and strong starting point. The other thing, too, that I wanted to mention is, as Jack has mentioned, or Manager McIntyre, I should say, forgive my informality. We rarely get to the point where we're actually issuing vacate orders, but it's important to have that lever available because that really is the ultimate sanction on bad actors who are slumlords. I'll also note, and this is, I think, an even more important point, that we did that once with a property, Grove Crest, and we almost did it with another property, Maynard Court, until they cooperated. And in both instances, our staff, and in the case of Grove Crest, together with some employees there who did care about the residents and were willing to act in good faith, our staff worked tirelessly to find homes for those people, and we're successful in doing so. So to our staff's credit, they worked the phones, they worked tirelessly to make it happen, and to the credit of one or two people at least at Grove Crest who had hearts and did care, even if their bosses didn't, we were able to find homes for the people in those situations.
Thank you, Mayor Grimal. Any other questions for council? Hearing none. I thank you guys for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Before we get to close, I'd definitely like to thank the Grants Department, 50 District Court, Human Resources, and Community Development departments for coming and talking to the council today. I'd like to also thank the administration, as well as the council for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here for our hearings today. Our upcoming department hearing schedule is May the 18th, Finance, Communications, and Informational Technology, May the 25th, Department of Public Works and Recreation. And at this time, do we have any public comment? Dr. L. Waterman, please. You have 3 minutes.
Council, Executive Office, this brings back memories of the 8 budget hearings that I went through as mayor. The first 2 being with the Treasury, Michigan Treasury, moving down our backs here and having to make sure that we carefully looked at the numbers. But I was very pleased as I heard the conversation. I heard the Pontiac moving forward mention. That was the strategic plan that we set up. That was one of the first things. We took a year doing that, and we got a grant from the EPA to talk about where Pontiac goes and how it should move forward, and what tactics we put in place to get ourselves the economic recovery, which was very successful. I'm glad to see that you're still referring to that, and that still has been useful, that exercise that we did. And so as you talk about affordable housing, and I see that's a concern that we've heard many times, and Pastor James, I heard you talked about wanting a housing study to be done by their economic development director. And I think she was here previously, and one of the things that came out of another public conversation we had, and that was the conversation we had from the progressive planners that we also got a grant for that we had over a weekend. One of the things they talked about was Pontiac needed to do a housing study, and I think before she left, we know we're about to get studied on that, so now that she's back, that's something that you can work on. But it was also a public conversation, and I hope that you will continue to engage in those. That's something that worked very well for the city of Pontiac, not only for Pontiac moving forward, but also for the master plan. I've heard you talk about that. A housing policy is not made in a vacuum. To be able to achieve affording policy, you don't wave a wand and say, let's have affordable housing. It's about the way you do policies, the way you decide how you're going to give your abatements, how you're going to zone. So it involves a number of things, and also what policies council sets. So I do encourage, as I said before, that there be a public conversation about such things as the master plan and those kind of policies. And lastly, I'm also glad that I got a chance to see their HR director, and she talked about you're still doing the same thing that we had done, allowing money for investing in training and continuing education for our staff, management staff, as well as executive staff, as I did. And I'm glad to hear there was some confusion about whether that was illegal. You are continuing it as I have continued it, and there was some confusion, I think, at the last council meeting, and I heard that, so I'm glad to hear the HR director address that that is not illegal. Okay, that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waterman. At this time, we'll turn the gavel back over to President McGinnis.
Thank you. Could I please have a motion to suspend the rules to discuss Pontiac City Council staff next steps and Pontiac Community Foundation upcoming community activity? So it's moved by Rutherford and seconded by Carrington, was it? That we suspend the rules to basically talk about two quick items that weren't on the previously approved agenda. Roll call on the motion to suspend the rules. Clerk Doyle?
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yeah.
Carrington.
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays.
Okay, so very briefly, I want to make sure that the council saw what I provided to you, the 12 applications that we received for the city council chief of staff position. I wanted those to be able to be reviewed by each of you respectively, so that way we can, there were probably more applicants, but the HR department reviews to make sure who at least meets the minimum requirements. And so here are the 12 applications that we have for this position. If you can provide your feedback in the sheet that I have, the cover sheet I've provided for you by the end of the day tomorrow. You can do it this evening if you've already have a sense. But to review the resumes and the supporting documentation, so that way we can winnow down who goes out of the next round, which will be sort of the initial interviews. And then there'll be another round of or more of final interviews, so that way the city council can help make the best and most informed decision for that.
Point of
personnel matter.
information.
Yeah.
So after we do this and we narrow it down, who will be on the interviewing committee?
Well, we can have in a special meeting, we can have the full city council do probably the final interviews like we did for the outreach specialist position last summer. But is there any volunteering for the?
Me.
Okay.
Well, I would recommend that since we already have a personnel and finance subcommittee, that they would be involved in that process at some point.
But Councilwoman Rutherford, Pro Tem Carrington, and Councilman Parker, if we have sort of like an ad hoc initial interview screening team, are you willing to do that?
That's fine.
Okay. And the first round will probably be Zoom. You know, we have some applicants who are from out of state, and probably the most practical matter for the initial interaction would be virtual before we have in-person interviews, so. Councilwoman Rutherford.
So also, how many rounds of interviews are we doing and what's the timeline?
I would like us to have completed this within the next, at most, within the next 2 weeks, that we'll have made a final decision.
Thank you.
But I think that, you know, the goal is in the next 24 hours, let us know from 12, you know, who will be the 6 that we'll take a greater look, but we'll probably then have a finalist pool of 2 or 3 after we've done that initial round. So early next week, we can do the virtual interviews. It makes sense that someone from council leadership have a role, so Pro Tem can sort of fill that role. Councilman Parker is on the Finance and Personnel Subcommittee. So I hear what you're saying, and we'll try and balance all of that, but also availability counts. And the 3 of you have just offered to sacrifice your time on the altar of public service yet again. So any questions about that? Any further questions about that? Okay, and so the second item, very briefly, is that the Pontiac Community Foundation has their 5-year anniversary gala, And who is one of the honorees but the Honorable, Just, Noble, and Beautiful Kathleen James. Congratulations, Councilwoman James, for the greatly deserved honor there. The Pontiac City Council will be there to support you, and we have a table. So Councilwoman Rutherford has shared she's up for going. Councilman Goodman plans to go. I plan to go. And so now I turn to the remaining members of council of what does your evening of Friday, May 19th look like?
You better be there.
Already registered.
Oh, okay. Bing, bang, boom.
Yes.
Okay. And yourself, Councilman James, your seating is resolved?
Yes, and I bought 4 tickets for my family.
Okay.
And I'd like for Councilwoman Rutherford to sing if she's
wow.
not already on the program.
Well, you know, for you, darling, I will. I would charge them, of course, but for you, I'll do it for free. Thank you so much. I do have a question, though.
Yes.
This is a gala, so I get to wear a real dress, right?
Yeah.
Not that we have to delve into that now, I don't know.
I just want to know if it's a gala. You know what I'm talking about. Thank you. That's it.
Any further discussion on the Pontiac Community Foundation? Mayor Grimel, will you be there?
I will indeed. I committed to that a couple months back, and now I'm going to triple my commitment now that I know that our own Councilwoman James is being honored. So that's awesome. Congratulations, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
All right, with that, hearing no further discussion on those items.
Well, not on those items, but I do, before we close out, I do want to make a request. If I
Sure.
might. I first want to thank the administration for the lovely book that they got and the presentation that they do. I would ask, though, that as the departments do their presentations, that they give us a copy of what they're presenting, because some of it is a good supplemental as to what we've given. And I would also ask that as we do this, either my eyes are failing me, or some of the writings have gotten a whole lot smaller than last year. We would, at least as we do the agenda, we could just add the GL codes that apply to help us be able to find what we're looking for sometime.
We got magnifying glasses for you.
And I'd appreciate it. But if we could just put GL codes, I think it'll help to be able to figure out where all that stuff is. I would appreciate it.
Okay. Did you hear that clerk's office? So, for example, we could show Department 690 or that it's 101 690 for, all right, sounds like we got a plan. Thank you for flagging that. This is a great time to do that. I sent the city council, our usual weekly routine of what we anticipate for the agenda to come. Clerk Doyle shared 2 additional items. So those, Clerk Doyle, do you want to briefly just give a preview since I did not warn the city council to those 2 items?
Thank you, Mr. President. One is a resolution for a budget amendment for the marijuana regulations budget to hire some summer assistants. The only reason why we have to do a budget amendment is just for $5,000. It's because my understanding from the finance staff, since I was moving money from a postage account to a payroll account, it still needs to come before city council. Normally, it needs to be over $10,000. And then the other one is the clerk's office has verified that the Sensible Cannabis Reform Committee, and I may be getting their name incorrect, but it's some variation of that. They circulated petitions challenging our regulatory ordinance for marijuana, which was Ordinance 2406, and the zoning ordinance, which was 2407. And they did have enough valid signatures for both of those. So we will be presenting that information formally to the city council, because it's a section of the charter that requires the council to act.
So basically, there will be a special presentation informing us of what are the prospective next steps, and that there will also be on the agenda whatever that action is that we have to then are next prompted to do. Does that fairly summarize it?
Yes, thank you.
And President, that would
Councilman Parker, Councilman Rutherford.
And that will be that won't be a closed session for that, will it? Or will it be?
No, we'll be letting the community as well as ourselves know. It's basically the outcome of what that referendum circulation was, and then what's the timeline to come. But obviously there may be future closed session needs if there are legal implications beyond that.
Point of it.
Councilwoman Rutherford.
So because I've abstained from all this, I'm to abstain from this continuing, correct?
That is based on what comes next. That would be logical. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I ain't gotta come.
Well, you're coming to the meeting.
Okay.
But
Thank
yes,
you.
you could certainly step out of the room at that phase.
Just wanna make sure, don't want no lawyers back.
No, you go above and beyond to make sure that, thank you for that. But Clerk Doyle, anything else? I didn't mean to cut you off on that. Okay, thank you. And I just wanted council to know because that was something that I hadn't anticipated when I, sent that out Wednesday of what was to come. So, hearing no further motions or discussion, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Parker, seconded by Councilwoman Rutherford. On the motion to adjourn is before us. Clerk Doyle.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. We stand adjourned at 7:52 p.m.